Welcome to the Horror Highway. Today we're diving deep into the shadows, exploring the untold stories, mysteries, and darkest moments that have left an indelible mark on the state of Georgia. From eerie historical events to chilling tales that echo through time, Georgia holds secrets that many may not be aware of. Join me as we shine a light on the shadows and uncover the unsettling stories that have unfolded within the borders of Georgia. So buckle up and prepare for the darkest Georgia iceberg. Layer 1. Snoligoster. I think that's how you say it. This cryptid is a long, amphibious creature from lumberjack folktales in North America. It is also known as a fearsome critter. It resides in swamplands in the southern regions, with a notable presence in Lake Okeechobee, Florida. Obviously, this is the Georgia iceberg, so I won't talk about the sightings there, and it has been seen here as well. The Snoligoster exhibits a presence for any type of meat, but it particularly favors human flesh. Upon capturing a victim, it employs its tail to hurl the unfortunate individual into a spike positioned on its back, where it stores the body until it gets hungry. When ready to eat, the Snoligoster utilizes the tail to make a hole in the ground, putting the body in the hole from its spike into the hole, and subsequently it proceeds to eat the victim. Occasionally, the Snoligoster employs its tail as a club to strike elusive targets that prove challenging to stab. The creature is described as a large crocodilian creature. Three unique things about the Snoligoster is that it has no legs, it has 3 bony plates on its tail, almost exactly like a propeller, and it has a big spike on its back. The creature just wiggles its tail back and forth, causing the propeller-like plates to spin, enabling the creature to move through dense swamps. It's also covered in long, thick hair, and it's about as long as 3 normal-sized men laying down. River dinos, also known as river lizards, mini rexes, prairie devils, and just a bunch of other names. They're reptilian cryptids from the American West, with a high number of sightings in the Four Corner region. Similar creatures have been seen in Ohio, Kentucky, Texas, and Georgia, as well as the Four Corner states. In the early months of 1996, a woman residing in the Mesa Verde region of Colorado reported encountering a creature, and she struggled to categorize it, describing it as not a lizard really, approximately 3.5 feet in length and standing at a height of 3.5 feet as well. It exhibited rapid movement, supported by what appeared to be only 2 legs providing balance. This mysterious animal possessed a cone-shaped snout and boasting a tail measuring around 2 feet. Seeking insights, the woman sought the expertise of Jeff Thulin, a specialist from the Reptile Reserve, familiar with similar accounts. Thulin acknowledged that, based on the detailed description, no identifiable match to any known species could be established. Additionally, he pointed out that the local climate ruled out the possibility of lizards surviving the winter in that area. Georgia Raptor. I guess kinda going with the previous entry, the Georgia Raptor is a trodontid-like creature said to have been sighted in Georgia on July 25th. Shout out Omar, my partner, not gay by the way, 2008. An 18-year-old man and his grandfather were hunting deer at night in Georgia when they saw an animal in which they described as closely resembling a raptor from the Jurassic Park movies. It has been suggested that it might have actually been a trodontid. Honestly, that's pretty much it. The people who did see the Georgia Raptor have a much longer version that they told, but like I said before, I don't want to make the video too long. Racoon Cat, a half raccoon, half cat-like cryptid that lives in the northwestern part of the state of Georgia. Its first recorded sighting was on December 19th, 2013. While driving in a Dodge Caravan, a teenager initially spotted the Racoon Cat and promptly informed some friends about the discovery. One friend quickly grabbed a camera phone, and unfortunately, just as they prepared to capture a photo of the Racoon Cat, it dashed away, disappearing into the trees. On the next day, the young man revisited the location and stumbled upon prints resembling that of a cat or a raccoon. While looking back at the sighting, he described it as a creature with a body resembling a cat, but a distinctly non-feline head. The head, adorned with raccoon-like stripes, featured a broader face than the typical cat's, although acknowledging the possibility of being too far away. for a clear view of the creature. He still remains convinced that the Racoon Cat represents a new cryptid or hybrid, I don't know. There are 2 other sightings, but I won't really talk about them since I don't want to make the video too long. The Altamaha-ha water monster, also known as Alti. This cryptid resides in the Altamaha River in southern Georgia. In North America, the Altamaha-ha the Alti, my bad. Not only has been sighted, but has also become a central figure in numerous myths and legends since its discovery by the local Native American tribe in Georgia, predating British English colonization. Described as possessing a sturgeon-like body with a distinctive bony ridge along its upper surface, the Alti is said to have front flippers, lacking hind limbs, and exhibits a swimming style reminiscent of dolphins and porpoises. Its snout is akin to that of a crocodile. The creature is reported to have gray hue with a whitish yellowish underbelly. Despite extensive observations, no tangible evidence of the Alti has ever been put out. Some depictions suggest that it may adopt a green coloration for camouflage purposes. Thunderbird. Yeah, I kind of feel like we should have already done this on a different iceberg. I'm not sure if Omar has, but I haven't, even though those states have had Thunderbird sightings. Anyways, the Thunderbird is a cryptid linked to sizable bird-like creatures believed to inhabit regions extending from northern Canada and Alaska to Central America. These beings are recurrent in Native American folklore, with legends recounting colossal eagles possessing the strength to transport whales to their nests. Reports of substantial bird sightings have been documented since the westward migration of pioneers from the North American plains. Other narratives emerge from various civilizations globally. Whichever one of us, Omar or I, do the Illinois iceberg, we will probably go more in depth there, since I feel like that's the appropriate state to go in depth. Hogzilla. Another animal, not cryptid, because this does exist, and we already covered it on the Texas iceberg. Check that video out. But yeah, someone already hunted it, but it has been sighted in Georgia while it was alive. Moon-eyed people. I believe that this is more of a North Carolina thing, but there are some cases of them being sighted in Georgia. They are a Native American legend, and the legend tells of the moon-eyed people, characterized by their large round eyes, inspiring the name. These beings, possibly linked to European dwarves for their short stature, were said to inhabit North Carolina. According to the legend, these little people dwelled on the ground, and discoveries of small, mound-shaped structures containing utensils fueled the belief in the moon-eyed people's existence. Some witnesses speculated that these house-like mounds serve as energy sites or places of power. The moon-eyed people are described as nocturnal, offering a potential explanation for their unusually large eyes. The moon-eyed people are noted in a 1968 historical marker in Fort Mound State Park, Chatsworth, Georgia. Stories of the people appear in park guides and news articles of the era. Bigfoot and ranking. Obviously, I don't think I have to explain what/who Bigfoot is now, since we're pretty deep into the series and we've already talked about Bigfoot. Anyways, Georgia has 140 reported sightings on BigfootResearchOrganization.com, making it 10th on the whole website's number of sightings in the United States. Layer 2. Georgia Swamp Thing. This is just another Bigfoot, so yeah, just basic Bigfoot info, but it has a name to it, and it is said to reside in the Okefenokee Swamp. The Pigman. I guess Al Gore was right. Man-Bear-Pig does exist. Okay, but there's actually 4 cases of pigmen in the United States, and I am ashamed to say that I missed it in Texas. That story is different from Georgia's pigmen, so when we do the giant 70-80 hour video, I will add it to Texas. In Hawkinsville, Georgia, there's a bridge located in Holland Road. The legend goes, a local man trained pigs for a circus. He was described as eccentric and seemed to prefer the company of pigs that he owned over that of people. But then one day, his pigs just killed him. And according to locals, when you visit the bridge at night, you can see a creature/ghost of a man with a pig head. Some people even say that they have been chased by this pigman. So yeah, Al Gore was right. Man-Bear-Pig does exist, so be careful if you're in Texas, Georgia, and the other 2 states. which I didn't write down, so I can't remember which states they are. The Werewolf of Talbotton. During the late 1800s, a small Georgia town faced a distributing trend of livestock being slaughtered. Soon, residents observed particular behavior, like disappearing into the woods, sharp teeth, and wild hair, and a newcomer named Emily Burt. Suspicions peaked when a hunter claimed to have shot a werewolf, and Emily sported a scar in the same location the next day. Emily's legacy is now confined to a gravestone, leaving the truth about her alleged werewolf transformation, what's the other word? Lycanthropy? And is shrouded in mystery. There's also a rumor that visiting her grave during a full moon allows one to hear a distant wolf howl, which I think it'd be pretty cool if Omar and I ever do like road trip around the whole United States. That'd be a sick place to visit. Fannin County Fairies. The Cross Fairies, are also known as the Fannin County Fairies in Georgia, represent a particular type of cryptid, and despite their elusive nature, there is no actual sightings reported. Their existence is suggested through the discovery of rare cross-like artifacts left in various locations. According to Cherokee folklore, these stone artifacts are believed to form when the fairies' tears touch the ground. It is said that the fairies wept while witnessing the March of Tears. The intriguing aspect lies not in how these objects are created, but rather in the mystery surrounding the origin of said objects. The Wog. Why was I so loud? Also known as the Georgia Wog. It's a cryptid associated with Jackson County. It's usually described as a demonic dog with features of other animals. The Wog was said to be jet black, long-haired. It's about the size of a small horse, but its legs were much shorter, the front ones being some 12 inches. The Wog is also known in nearby Barrow County, where it is sometimes said to protect a mud volcano called the Noderick site, an odd, boggy, bubbling pond near the town of Winder. Local legends say the place was used by the Creeks to execute criminals and then throw the corpses into the bog. Layer 3. UFO Ranking. I'm using satelliteinternet.com for the UFO rankings. To my surprise, Georgia is ranked 48th throughout the whole United States, with 24 UFO sightings per 100,000 people. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, some states have to be at the bottom, some have to be at the top. It just so happens that Georgia is at the bottom. Jimmy Carter UFO Incident. This incident refers to an event that former US President Jimmy Carter reported experiencing in 1969. At the time, before his presidency, Carter was in Leary, Georgia, waiting outside for a meeting to begin when he and a group of about 10 people claimed to have seen an unidentified flying object in the night sky. The UFO was said to be a strange bright white object, almost as bright as the moon, and according to Carter, the UFO was a bright light that changed colors and appeared to hover for about 10 minutes. Carter described the object as being very bright and said that it had changed colors as it moved across the sky. He reported the sighting to the International UFO Bureau in Oklahoma City. Carter, both during his and after his presidency, has been open about his UFO sighting and expressed his belief that there is life beyond Earth. However, he also noted that he doesn't think the UFO he witnessed was an extraterrestrial spacecraft, but rather an unidentified flying object that couldn't be explained easily. Layer 4. Euharlee Covered Bridge. This bridge was rebuilt in the 1880s after the bridge that was there ended up being washed away. During the time when the bridge was washed away, it also apparently killed a man, and that is one of the stories for why the bridge is haunted. But people who claim to experience something on the bridge never claim it to be a man, but rather a little girl who was apparently hung from the bridge's rafter. Apparently in the early 2000s, a group of paranormal investigators went to the area near the bridge and wanted to investigate. The group then set up a way to collect physical evidence. They closed down the bridge, laid down sand on the bridge, and held a vigil with residents in the town. In the morning, when the group went to the bridge to see if the sand showed anything, it revealed boot prints, hoof prints, and tracks that looked from a wagon, indicating that the legends might be true, but who knows. Masquerade Nightclub. This building dates back to the 1890s, and it was originally known as the Dupree Excelsior Mill. Then it turned into a pizzeria in 1978. It closed down for a bit in 1989, but it eventually reopened as the nightclub that we know of today. One of the local legends suggests a woman died in an accident at the club, and you can still hear her screams when you're standing inside the building at night. Another one of the more prominent legends is that a tall and large African American man who is always walking around the club. The people... okay, so this next entry, quote, I'm getting from a website, should be on our sources page thing, says that this large and tall African American male turns the musical amplifiers every night, and that's how they word it. So I don't know if he turns them on or not, but yeah. I also don't know anything about music amplifiers, if that means anything or not, so yeah. The reported activity is such as phantom footsteps, cold spots, and horrifying screams. Also, apparently there is a rumor that nowadays real vampires go there to the nightclub, and some of them even live there. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's true or not. Someone should check that out and let us know about it. Rhodes Memorial Hall. This building was built in 1904, and the owner at the time, Amos Skiles Rhodes, and his wife had a huge stained glass mural depicting the rise of the Confederacy, and even a portrait of Nathan Bedford Forrest, who was a former Grand Wizard. In 1927, Amanda, who was Amos's wife, passed away inside the house, and was shortly joined by her husband in 1928. Both Amos and his wife, Amanda, are said to haunt the location. One of the websites I used for information on this one says their children also haunt the hall, but also another website does not say anything about that, other than the children got the hall and later gave it away to the state. So I'm not sure if the children also haunt the hall. People also say that the basement of the hall feels a lot more menacing and dark, that a malevolent presence of a man is said to linger in the area. Georgia Bay Complex. On April 16th, 2007, a downed power line would start a fire that at the time was known as the Sweat Farm Road Fire. Over the next 48 hours, that fire would burn 48,000 acres of land. 5 days later, on April 21st, the fire would reach Aukafanoki Wildlife Refuge and be renamed the Big Turnaround. Then on May 5th, another fire started by lightning, known as the Boogaboo Fire. And 15 days later, the two fires were joined together to make what had come to be known as the Georgia Bay Complex. This fire started in Georgia, would reach all the way to Florida, and its path would burn over 500,000 acres of land between the two states, and wouldn't be considered contained till July of that year. Extreme drought is considered one of the reasons that the fire was able to get so big. The Fox Theater. This theater has been around since 1929. People say they could see the ghost of Civil War soldiers that passed standing in the window of the theater. Other people say that they see a ghostly organ player who played for the Fox Theater for 24 years. Also, apparently their ashes are inside the organ. Also, this theater is the first place in Atlanta that had an automated elevator, and visitors say that there's a ghost who smells like roses and enjoys pressing the buttons for the wrong floors while people are inside the elevator. Yeah, that last ghost encounters story is kind of insane. I'd be annoyed as hell if that happened to me. The Old Pink House. This is one of the more famous haunted houses in Georgia, and it is known for being haunted by the ghost of its original owner, named James Habersham Jr., who built the house in Savannah in 1789, but ended up dying under suspicious circumstances. He was officially declared as dying due to declining health, but some think he committed word puzzle after he found out about his wife cheating on him. Today is a popular restaurant, and apparently he continues to haunt it. The employees who work for the restaurant claim to see tables and chairs inexplicably moved, and candles lit with no one in the room. Also, the ghost apparently cleans after everyone leaves, which is pretty nice of him to do. So yeah, shout out to the ghost. Free labor. Layer 5. St. Simons Lighthouse. This lighthouse was constructed in 1872, replacing the old lighthouse that was destroyed during the Civil War in Georgia. In 1880, a lighthouse keeper named Frederick Osborne and his assistants, John Steffens, had an argument, and during it, Steffens shot Osborne and killed him. In 1908, the wife of the then current lighthouse keeper recounted a story. Faced with difficulties in operating the lighthouse mechanism, While her husband was absent, she grew frustrated with its malfunction, and she invoked the spirit of Mr. Osborne, and soon after witnessed his apparition actively engaged in repairing the machinery. Overwhelmed, she fainted, and upon regaining consciousness, discovered that the light was once again functioning correctly. Since that incident, Frederick Osborne's spirit has been reportedly observed and his footsteps heard, as if he continues to watch over the lighthouse. People who work at the lighthouse claim to hear footsteps on the stairs, and like mentioned previously, the lighthouse maintenance is always done, which I guess ghosts in Georgia just like cleaning or fixing stuff, bro. All I can say is, of all the states that I've researched throughout this series, Georgia's ghosts are probably the most helpful. Lake Lanier. It's a reservoir in the north of Atlanta, and it is known for being one of the deadliest lakes in the United States. More than 200 people have died at Lake Lanier between 1994 and 2022, according to USA Today and Georgia DNR. So the lake is located between Sugar Hill and White Sulphur Springs, and the lake also sits above a town that was once known as Oscarville. Oscarville was a predominantly black community that did experience a horrific amount of hate crimes in the early 20th century. Eventually, that town was flooded to create Lake Lanier. Some people claim that the souls from the town's cemetery are causing some sort of strange happening going on there. But while researching, I did find out about another ghost that haunts the lake. In 1958, a woman named Delia Parker and her friend Susie Roberts were driving, and while they were crossing the lake's bridge, whichever one of them was driving, the car lost control and ran off the bridge. Both women in the car disappeared at the bottom of the lake, and then a year later, a fisherman found the body of one of them. But the body was missing both hands and 2 toes. Apparently, Susie had been wearing a blue dress the day they crashed, and since then, people have reported a handless woman wearing a blue dress roaming the area of Lake Lanier. The 1936 Tupelo-Gainesville Tornado. One of the deadliest tornado outbreaks to ever hit the state of Georgia was the Tupelo-Gainesville Tornado, and it was an outbreak of 17 tornadoes over the states of Mississippi, Tennessee, South Carolina, and of course Georgia. On April 6, 1936, 2 F4 tornadoes were teared through the town of Gainesville, ravaging everything it made contact with, and in the end costing the city about $12 million in damages and destroying about 750 homes, as reported by the Tornado Project. The tornado would end up killing 203 people and injuring 1,600 people, at least according to the article Remembering the Gainesville Tornadoes of 1936 by Austin Eller. One of the most devastating loss of life that occurred during these tornadoes was what happened to the Cooper Plants factory. For one, after a tornado swept through the town, the water and electrical grids would take a massive hit and would be down for a while the workers in the Cooper Plants factory would take shelter in the basement to survive the tornadoes. But unfortunately, the building that lay on top was destroyed, and soon a fire would start, and since the water system was down, 60 people would lose their lives because of this fire. Oakland Cemetery. This cemetery is the oldest and largest burial ground in Atlanta, Georgia. It was founded in 1850, and it's the resting place for 70,000, and at least 3,000 of them were unnamed Confederate soldiers who died. The cemetery also has an African American section from way back then. This is considered one of the most haunted places in not only Atlanta, but Georgia as a whole. Old Candler Hospital. This hospital was built in 1804, which makes it the first hospital in Savannah. It is also arguably the most famous haunted hospital in Georgia. The hospital being that old, obviously a lot of people have passed in the building, especially during the 1820 and 1858 yellow fever epidemics, in which roughly 1,700 people passed due to it. Also, many bodies of dead patients piled up the underground morgue tunnel. Outside of the hospital, there is also an old Candler oak tree, which was known as Savannah's hanging tree. People who visit the location claim to see ghosts of people hanging from the tree at night, or be seen right outside the windows, and also in the tunnels. The 1958 Tybee Island mid-air collision. On February 5th, 1958, a B-47 bomber would be on a simulated combat mission. One of the bombs that the B-47 would have on board was a 7,600-pound Mark 15 nuclear bomb. Now, right off the bat, claims of whether the bomb was a functional nuclear bomb are argued, but I'll talk about it a bit more later. Anyways, while in the air over Georgia, another plane, a F-86 fighter, would end up colliding with the B-47, specifically the sixth engine of the B-47. Soon after, the pilot of the F-86 would eject from his jet and parachute safely near Estill, South Carolina. Meanwhile, the B-47 remained in the air for a little while more. The pilot would lose control for a bit, would manage to regain it, and then the crew had to request permission to jettison the bomb, so the bomb wouldn't go off, making an emergency landing, and that permission was given. So the bomb was dropped from a height of 7,200 feet, and would land near Tybee Island, and the surrounding water near Savannah, Georgia. The pilot of the B-47 would make a successful emergency landing in Hunter Air Force Base, also near Savannah, and obviously the bomb didn't go off when it was dropped, because if it was, then it would have been a historic event, and no one died during this whole event. Now, back to the bomb. Firstly, I said there was two claims, one by the Air Force that stated that the bomb had no nuclear capsule, which is what causes the nuclear reaction in the bomb. Instead of having a plutonium trigger, the bomb, instead, had a 150-pound cap of lead. However, in the 1966 congressional testimony, Assistant Secretary of Defense W.J. Howard would be quoted as saying the bomb was a complete weapon, a bomb with a nuclear capsule. Regardless if the bomb was actually filled with lead or plutonium, it didn't go off. Anyways, it would later turn out that this flight was actually not even authorized to fly with this type of payload. So if people had followed the rules, the US would have a missing nuclear bomb. And yes, I meant that. The area where the bomb was dropped has been narrowed down, but to this day remains unknown. And until the bomb is found, we don't know if it had lead or plutonium. Regarding the area the bomb is said to be buried under, it is reported by the Georgia Department of Natural Resources that there is no odd levels of unnatural radioactive contamination over that. The high levels that were already here due to the monazite, which occurs naturally in the area. Layer 6. Gainesville, 1903 tornado. On July 1st, 1903, the city of Gainesville would be hit by an F4 tornado, and despite the tornado only traveling about 4 miles and lasting for 2 minutes, the destruction it brought was disastrous, causing at the time $1 million in damages, which in about today is about $32.6 million worth of damages. The tornado would destroy many buildings, of which were a cotton mill and 70 cottages for employees of the Pacolet Mills, as well as damaging Gainesville ironworks and railroad tracks and freight cars. The tornado would end up killing at least 98 people and injuring 180 through 190. It is believed that the number of people killed was reduced since many workers at the time were at picnics and not at cotton mills/cottages when the tornado struck. Ellis Hotel. This hotel is the location of the deadliest hotel fire in the United States, and it ranks as one of the most haunted hotels in Atlanta. The guests that have stayed in the hotel claim to hear screams, smelling smoke, and seeing ghosts in the windows. The hotel was originally known as the Weinkauf Hotel and opened in 1913. In 1946, the Weinkauf Hotel fire happened and killed 119 occupants and both 76-year-old owners. Some people also claim that they could hear the fire alarm go off at the exact same time that the fire started. Layer 7. Battle of Chickamauga. Starting on September 18th, 1863, an estimated 60,000 Union troops, led by Maj. Gen. William S. Rosecrans, and 65,000 Confederate troops, led by General Braxton Bragg. For 3 days, William S. Rosecrans would be in battle with Confederate troops in order to recapture the town of Chattanooga, which was an important town for Confederate supply lines. Despite the Confederates losing the town of Chattanooga, they did not give up on the fight, and after 3 days of fighting on September 20th, the Confederates would be able to successfully recapture the town of Chattanooga, though only 2 months later, it would be taken by Union forces. In total, there were an estimated 34,624 casualties, making it the second bloodiest battle of the entire Civil War, with 16,170 Union troops and 18,454 Confederate troops being casualties of the battle. The Battle of Allatoona. On October 5th, 1864, in Bartow County, Georgia, the Union troops, led by Brigadier General John Corse, and the Confederates, led by Brigadier General Samuel French. In total, 3,944 troops engaged in battle, of which 1,944 were Union and 2,000 were Confederate. This battle was an offensive by the Confederates, while Union held control of the town of Allatoona. Just shortly before the attack, the Union soldiers would receive reinforcements, and after the Confederates sent an order for Union troops to surrender and received a negative, a 2.5-hour battle would begin before Union troops were forced to retreat to a star fort where they held their ground against the Confederate forces. Eventually, Confederate supplies started to grow low, and the news of more reinforcements being sent to the aid of the Union convinced the Confederate to back off, leading to a Union victory. In total, there was an estimated 1,606 casualties, of which 706 were Union and 897 were Confederate. By the way the generals communicated when French sent the surrender was extremely gentlemanly. French sent, "I have placed the forces under my command in such positions that you are surrounded, and to avoid a needless effusion of blood, I call on you to surrender your forces at once, and unconditionally. 5 minutes will be allowed you to decide. Should you accede to this, you will be treated with the most honorable manners as prisoners of war." And Corse responded with, "Your communication demanding surrender of my command, I acknowledge receipt of it, and respectfully reply that we are prepared for the needless effusion of blood, whenever it is agreeable to you." Damn. Hey, John Corse was just like that, bro. He stood on business. Battle of Atlanta. On July 22nd, 1864, Union troops led by Maj. General William T. Sherman against General John B. Hood. Initially, the Confederate troops were led by General Joseph E. Johnson, but due to what Confederate President Jefferson Davis saw, a lack of aggressiveness, so he was replaced with John Bell Hood. Sherman would lead about 3,500 Union troops, while Hood led around 40,000 Confederate troops. Union forces would advance to the city of Atlanta in order to capture it from the Confederate. It would be 6 days into the battle, on the 28th of July, that the Union would be able to take part of the city and successfully make a foothold there. But after this would be siege warfare. This would last all the way till September 1st, 1864, and that's when the Union troops took the entire city and forced the Confederate forces to abandon Atlanta. In total, there was an estimated 9,222 casualties, of which 3,722 were Union and 5,500 were Confederate. Chris Benoit. I'll start off with saying that I'm a huge professional wrestling fan, not just WWE, but just professional wrestling as a whole, especially Lucha Libre. Born on May 21st, 1967 in Montreal, Canada, he died on June 24th, 2007. He was a professional wrestler and was employed by the WWE at the time. The Chris Benoit murders occurred on June 2007 and shocked the world, and specifically the professional wrestling community. He was respected and an accomplished wrestler, but he was involved in a murder-suicide that claimed the lives of his wife, Nancy Benoit, and his 7-year-old son, Daniel Benoit. Their bodies were discovered in their Fayetteville, Georgia home. So yeah, I will say that WWE had I think it's lost media now, but they had a memorial show for Chris Benoit one day after they found out about it, but they then tried hiding the show after they found out the truth. So autopsies revealed that Nancy Benoit was strangled to death on June 22nd, 2007, and their son Daniel was suffocated on June 23rd, 2007, and Chris Benoit's cause of death was determined to be a suicide by hanging. The timeline suggested that the murders occurred over the course of the weekend, and Chris Benoit was sending distressing text messages and voicemails to other colleagues, I think specifically Chavo Guerrero and some others, but yeah, Chavo Guerrero was like the only one that came to my mind just now. He was indicating that he would miss upcoming wrestling events due to a family emergency, and concerned, their friends contacted the authorities, I think like a couple of days after they received the texts, and then that led to police discovering the scene. The aftermath of the Chris Benoit murders brought forth various elements that fueled discussions and investigations. Obviously, the presence of anabolic steroids in Chris Benoit's system did raise questions about the role of performance-enhancing drugs in professional wrestling. And additionally, the examination of Chris Benoit's brain revealed severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a condition linked to repeated head injuries. I think it was said that Chris Benoit's brain was that of an 80-year-old or older person with severe Alzheimer's disease. So, yeah. This discovery did spur conversations about the impact of concussions and head trauma in both the wrestling world and just sports in general, particularly in context of professional wrestling. The Chris Benoit tragedy prompted reflection on mental health, the well-being of the wrestlers, and the need for support systems. So yeah, one good thing that did kind of come from this is that professional wrestlers are encouraged to do less dangerous things, like unprotected headshots with chairs, except for like deathmatch wrestlers, and especially Darby Allin. He's insane. Like, the dude is gonna be crippled by the time he's 30. But yeah, enough about that. Paul Heyman puts this whole case best. Please don't copyright me.
Who's saying my boy? Why? Yeah, you can admire his work all you want, but you know what? You can admire his work all you want, but I'll give you my take on it, since you want to keep on yelling out my boy. 3 people died in that house that night. 3, I don't care about CTE. 3 people died in that house that night. Only 1 person had the choice behind it. The other 2 didn't have a choice to die. So if that's your boy, fuck you. As a performer, amongst the 5 greatest I've ever seen in my entire life. As a performer, loved having him in ECW, was going to make him the ECW World Heavyweight Champion, was going to put him in a feud with Eddie Guerrero that would have carried us. The very first pay-per-view was going to be Sabu versus Taz, Tommy Dreamer versus Raven, Chris Benoit versus Eddie Guerrero. If we had gone on pay-per-view in '96, that would have been our first pay-per-view. So as a talent, remarkable. As a human being, I don't care about CTE. I don't care what the reasons are. Nancy and Daniel had no option. He did. Fuck him.
Layer 8. Carlton Gary, also known as the Stalking Strangler. He was an American serial killer convicted of sexual assaulting and murdering elderly women in the late 1970s. His crimes were committed in the city of Columbus, Georgia. The moniker Stalking Strangler was given to him due to his method of strangulation, often using ligatures such as stockings. Gary's crime spree took place between 1977 and 1978, during which a series of elderly women were assaulted, raped, and murdered in their homes. The victims were often found with ligatures tied around their necks. The killings created a sense of fear and unease in the community, and law enforcement launched an intensive investigation to capture the perpetrator. In 1984, Carlton Gary was arrested and later convicted for the murders of 3 elderly women. He was sentenced to death. Gary maintained his innocence through the legal proceedings, claiming that he was framed, that the evidence was mishandled. However, the prosecution argued that there were similarities in the modus operandi and forensic evidence linking him to the crimes. Carlton Gary spent years on death row, appealing his conviction. In 2018, Gary was executed by lethal injection at the Georgia Diagnostic and Classification State Prison. The Atlanta Lovers Lane Murders. This was a series of unresolved shootings on 3 different couples in Atlanta, Georgia, in 1977. 3 people were left dead and 3 others were left injured. The same gun, a .38 caliber pistol, was used in all 3 shootings, which suggested a single perpetrator was responsible for all the attacks. The first victims were LeBrian Levitt and Veronica Hill. At around 1 a.m. on January 16, 1977, an out-of-control car drove full speed into an intersection and hit a streetlight in Atlanta, Georgia. Police were called after witnesses noticed the car occupants weren't coming out. They searched the inside and found 28-year-old LeBrian Levitt and 25-year-old Veronica Hill naked with gunshot wounds. Hill was in the back seat of the car under a coat. Lovett's wounds were in the head, stomach, right leg, and left arm. Hill's wounds were in the left leg and her abdomen. Both of them were still alive when they were found, and they were rushed to the hospital, where both died of their wounds. During the investigation, it was noted that the couple were seen heading to Adams Park, a notorious hangout spot for couples to have sex at. The second incident left no one dead, but Dennis Langston and Detra Tatum were injured at around 2 a.m. on February 12, 1977. 18-year-old Dennis Langston and 17-year-old Detra Tatum were having sex in a parked car in West Manor Park when an unknown individual approached the passenger window and fired 6 shots. One of the bullets hit Dennis and another hit Detra. Both teens were still alive and were seriously injured, and they were rushed to the hospital. Dennis and Detra would later make a full discovery. The teens said that they got a quick look at the shooter, but were only able to identify him as a tall African-American male. The bullets the perpetrator fired were tested, and was determined that they came from the same gun that killed LeBrian Levette and Veronica Hill a month earlier, which was a .38 caliber gun. The third attack left Deanne Collins dead, and her fiancé was left injured. On March 12, 1977, 20-year-old Deanne Collins was with her fiancé in Adams Park. The couple did not see the gunman. As he drew near the vehicle, he shot 6 rounds into the passenger side window, killing Collins. Her fiancé was wounded in the head, but survived. After the attack, he managed to drive the car to his house, where he phoned an ambulance. The Atlanta Child Murders. The Atlanta Child Murders took place between 1979 and 1981, and involved a series of horrifying crimes that primarily targeted African-American children and young adults in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. During this period, at least 28 individuals were killed, and sparking widespread fear and distrust within the community. The victims, most of whom were strangled, were often abducted, and their bodies were found in various locations, contributing to a climate of panic. The authorities, under immense pressure to solve this case, struggled to bring an end to the spree of abductions and murders. Wayne Williams emerged as the central suspect in the investigation. Though not initially linked to the child murders, Williams came to the attention of law enforcement due to his erratic behavior and the discovery of forensic evidence connecting him to 2 adult victims. In 1982, he was convicted of the murders of 2 adults, and the police officially closed the majority of the child murder cases, attributing them to Williams. However, controversy surrounds the case's closure, with skeptics questioning the evidence against Williams and proposing the possibility of multiple perpetrators or other unresolved cases. A couple of decades later, in 2019, the Atlanta Child Murders investigation was reopened by city officials. The decision to revisit the case aimed to leverage modern forensic techniques and reassess available evidence, providing potential closure to the victim's family and addressing lingering questions about the true scope of the victims of the crimes. Paul John Knowles, also known as the Casanova Killer or the Casanova Strangler. He was a serial killer active in the early 1970s. While he committed crimes across multiple states including Florida and Georgia, his connection to Georgia involves a series of murders during a crime spree. He was known as a charismatic and manipulative individual who targeted both men and women. He is believed to have committed a string of murders between July and November 1974. His victims included hitchhikers, stranded motorists, and individuals she encountered during his travels. Knowles was known for his ability to gain the trust of his victims before he turned violent. In Georgia, Knowles committed several murders, adding to the overall toll of his crime spree. His victims in the state included from various walks of life, and the murders often involved robbery and sexual assault. His erratic and violent behavior earned him a spot on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitive list. The crime spree came to an end in November 1974 when Knowles was captured in Georgia after a high-speed chase. He had murdered a man named William Bates and taken Bates' family hostage, but law enforcement managed to apprehend him. He was subsequently convicted and sentenced to death. Knowles was eventually killed in a struggle with law enforcement while trying to escape custody in December 1974. And Gary Michael Hilton, or the National Forest Serial Killer. He's an American serial killer and was convicted of murder, who gained notoriety for his crimes, including one high-profile case in Georgia. He was born on November 22, 1946 in Atlanta, Georgia. While Hilton committed crimes in multiple states, like Florida, North Carolina, his connection to Georgia is notably associated with the kidnapping and murder of Meredith Emerson in 2007, In January 2008, Hilton was arrested in the connection of the brutal slaying of Meredith Emerson, a 24-year-old hiker who went missing while on a New Year's Day hike on Blood Mountain in North Georgia. Emerson's disappearance garnered significant media attention and led to widespread search efforts. Unfortunately, her body was discovered several days later in the Dawson Forest Wildlife Management Area. Hilton was connected to the crime through evidence and eyewitness accounts. He had kidnapped Emerson during her bike and later killed her. Hilton was known to be an experienced outdoorsman, and his arrest raised concerns about the safety of hikers and outdoors enthusiasts. After his arrest in the Emerson case, Hilton was linked to other crimes. He pleaded guilty to the murders of Cheryl Dunlap in Florida and John and Irene Bryant in North Carolina, and he received multiple life sentences for these crimes. He was caught on January 5th, 2008. Angel Maturino Resendiz, or the Railroad Killer. It's another serial killer that we already kinda covered on our Texas Iceberg. Check that one out if you're interested. Wikipedia says that he has one murder in Georgia, that being Fanny Whitney Byers, and it happened on December 10th, 1998. He bludgeoned her to death with a tire iron in her home, which was located near CSX Transportation Railroad tracks. A couple from Lexington that ended up being charged with her murder, but Angel apparently confessed to her murder to an FBI agent. Gary Ray Bowles, another American serial killer, also known as the I-95 Killer or the Cross County Killer. His crimes spanned multiple states and targeted gay men. While he didn't really have a prominent connection to Georgia, one of his known victims, Albert Morris, was murdered in Savannah. In 1994, Gary Ray Bowles embarked on a killing spree that began in Daytona Beach, Florida. His victims were typically older gay men who he would meet at bars. Bowles would then rob them, brutally murder them, and his crime spree took him through multiple states along the Interstate 95 corridor, leading to his moniker, the I-95 Killer. Bowles' criminal activities in Georgia came to the forefront when he murdered Albert Morris in Savannah in 1994. After attacking Morris, Bowles stole his credit card and car, continuing his killing spree. He was eventually captured in Florida and sentenced to death in 1996 for the murder of Walter Hinton. He later received additional death sentences for other murders he committed during his crime spree. Hey, what's up? It's Eris again. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what state I should do next. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd also like to apologize for not having the video up sooner. The past 2 weeks in this semester have already kicked my ass. I had like 4 tests to do, 2 projects, and 1 presentation to do. It was just too much, plus this video as well, so it took me a bit longer. I'll try to work faster. I might also take like, not a break, but I'll do the next episode of the 4chan timeline instead of Iceberg next, but I don't know yet, or maybe something different, and then upload another Iceberg like after that, just so I could have a lot more time to do both the Iceberg and schoolwork. Did I say give me a state suggestion next? I think I did. So yeah, just let me know what state I should do next for this series. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a good morning, day, night, whatever time of day it is for you. Anyways, love you. Bye.